Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 8 of Diary of a Dad. So, this week was the first week back from school, half term had finished, and it was a pretty normal week. We got back into routine maybe by Tuesday, but the Sunday before, and this happens to many people, is that they feel anxiety, dread, pit in their stomach before going back to work or school if they've had a portion of time off. And this is something that I experienced a little on Sunday. And I spent some time thinking about what that was, and I came to the following conclusion, and it was that people might refer to it as anxiety. I feel like it was a lack of preparation on my part. So when I put my laptop away the following Friday, since then I've not done any type of work at all when it comes to schoolwork. And that Sunday, it was more of a feeling of I'm not really sure what I need to do. And this term is going to be very busy. There's a lot of deadlines that we need to meet, a lot of projects we're working on. But I just had no idea of what I need to do and which ones are more important. And therefore, what I did on Sunday was spent probably about 3 hours just dealing with any small tasks that I can get rid of quickly. And then prioritizing my week, what I need to work on first, what I need to do, how long it'll take me. And by that end of that 2-3 hour session, I was pretty much set for the week. Any type of dread or anxiety that I felt was gone almost instantly. And I found that a lot of the time when we feel anxiety, it's just that we have so much to do or so many options when it comes to decision to make, and we've not really prioritized what we need to do. And when you sit down and just think about what you need to do and prioritize and get rid of anything you don't, then usually that anxiety goes. So the things I learnt about this week, the first was from a podcast I was listening to from the Diary of a CEO. And here he was interviewing a guy called Ramit Sethi, who's a financial advisor. And his main purpose in this episode was to teach young couples or married couples generally how to save and invest and, how to spend their money, basically. And the main takeaway I got from this, and something that I'm discussing with my wife at home, we're actually going to talk about it this weekend, is the salary or the money we accrue at the end of the month. We need to split it up into 4 main parts. Now, the first part that Ramit talks about is something called fixed costs, and these are the bills you need to pay every single month. And this might include housing, transport, electricity, internet. These are things that you can't avoid, and they will come out every single month. And therefore, we need to put in a spreadsheet approximately how much we are spending on these things every single month. The second part is the part of investment. The third is savings, and the fourth is guilt-free spending. Now, for savings, our goal will be to accrue a certain amount where all our fixed costs for 6 months have been saved up, and then our next goal is going to be 12 months. So once we've got the 12 months, then we can discuss whether we should put more into investments, or whether we should continue to save as we are. The third would be the investment portfolio. So for me, this is something that I have been doing for a while now, and I'm quite comfortable with where I'm investing. But I feel that it's easier for me just to put my investments into a hedge fund or a group of stocks and just put a percentage every single month and stop looking at the news and the financials and the P&L. And for me, it's just putting that money in there and forgetting about it, because I'm never going to be a financial expert or an investment expert. That's not something that my heart is in. I do want to save up enough money, but my heart isn't in there. And therefore, just think about where I want to put it and the allocation, and just leave it. The problem comes with my wife isn't that pro-investing for whatever reasons, and I think for me it's my duty to sit down and just teach her as much as I can about inflation and quantitative easing and the buying power of money reducing over time. And yes, probably what has happened is there's stories that have been floating around that people have put money into specific investments and it's not really gone well. And my point is going to be is these long-term investments are exactly that. We don't intend to take anything out for the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years if we don't need to. And it's just something that accrues over time. So in terms of savings, there's one thing I forgot to mention, and that was that if we have specific goals, then we need to put money aside for that. For now, our next goal is going to be going on a trip to Malaysia. Now, for me, if I could, I would just save as much as I can or put the rest into investments. But over time, I've come around where, yes, it is important to save money, but we also need to enjoy and spend that money within limits. And I told the story about someone last year that I heard about. Was he accrued so much money, he had millions in his account, and then he died. And the only people that enjoyed that was his family and his kids, and that is still noble, but he could have enjoyed that himself a little more as well, because you work really, really hard and you need to enjoy to an amount as well, because we don't know how long we're going to be here. And therefore, if your whole life is that of hardship and working hard but not really enjoying the fruits of your labor, then you have to an extent wasted that money. So I feel like everything is good in proportion, and therefore initially I was dead against it. And I just wanted to save a bit more, but I've come around to it. And if that means that it'll help her to save more and to work on other projects outside of her work to accrue more money, then that's fantastic. So yes, we've set aside an allocation, and that will monthly go into the trip we're going to. And I've asked her to prepare a little budget. So how much will it cost for flights and hotels and spending approximately, so we know the number we are trying to aim towards. The last part is called guilt-free spending. Now, this part is something that will allocate to one another, and you can spend this amount of money on anything you want, no questions asked. If someone is a foodie, we'll spend it on food. If someone is, if they like coffee, which my wife does, then she can spend and buy as much coffee as she wants, clothes, whatever it is. It's a reasonable amount, but it's not too much. But I know what will happen is that the amount I've allocated to her, the percentage, probably won't even be spent all the way. But I know that it's a small amount of the amount of money we have left at the end of the month. And if you know you have that amount, then you're less likely to spend on outside of that amount. And as long as it's a reasonable amount, then it's fine. So those are the 4 pots that we are allocating to. The first 3, so fixed costs, investments and savings, I'm automating as much as I can. So fixed costs are just direct debits or the equivalent in Dubai. Investments will go into an investment app, and they'll take that, so it'll just dollar cost average into the shares that I've listed. In terms of savings, the same thing. We've opened a separate account, and a certain percentage of that will go into our savings account. So it's automated. It means there's less time for us to, less room for us to make mistakes as well. And any credit cards we have, the full amount is paid automatically at the end of every month. So we're building up our credit score as well as accruing points depending on the type of credit card that we have. So that's financial education. The next point was something that I read this week, was the Arrival Fallacy. I wanted to touch upon that last week, but I was talking a lot last week anyway, so I didn't really want to extend that podcast even more. So the Arrival Fallacy was something that was coined by a behavioral scientist called Tal Ben-Shahar. And the basic premise of that is that people come into the mindset is, I will be happy when. So they apply but and if statements. And that means that if I only get this car, or I only get this house, or some sort of condition, then I'll be happy. And more often, or every single time rather, when that condition actually comes to fruition, that happiness is short-lived. And you do feel happy for a short period of time, and then once again you find something to dissatisfy you, and therefore you move on to the next but and if statement. And that has happened to me in my life several times, and I'm sure it has happened to you as well. And I was just thinking, like, how can we avoid that? If you attach conditions to happiness, if we get this and then you don't get it, then you feel empty, without a purpose, unfulfilled. And I was reading about what we could do, and the first was and there were three main things, is leading with the why. So why are we doing this? So if you have a specific purpose in life, if you have a specific goal, then when you make these tiny milestones, then, if you have a reason of why you're doing something, then even if you reach that goal, the why hasn't been fulfilled. So for example, I'll say that I want to be a good role model to the kids, and therefore maybe I'm working out a certain amount of times a week and training a certain times a week and making sure my body is in specific shape. And even if I do go to the gym that week, it's something that's ongoing. That's something that we will see, and that will be the paradigm that they grow up in, and they will understand that working out, keeping healthy, keeping fit, playing sports is a normal part of life. And that would be an example of why. The next is gratitude. We need to show gratitude and be happy with the life that we have, but it's a constant reminder. And this is something that I do every single week. And whilst I don't have a schedule for it, it's something that's constantly on my mind, that when I feel that there's something that I should be complaining about, or I'm not happy with the way something is, I just take a step back and just think about what I do have and the things that I have today that I've prayed for a very long time when I was younger. And it just makes you appreciate a lot more what you have. And even though it's great to have goals and to work towards very, very big goals, it's sometimes also good just to appreciate where you are now and the blessings that you've been given. And the life is, and the last solution for me is that we have a higher purpose. So as a Muslim, I know what my higher purpose is and what I'm doing and why I'm doing it. And therefore, a lot of the things need to make sure they're aligned. So me being a good father will align with being a good Muslim, or me being a kind human being, or me being a good boss, or whatever I'm doing, there'll be it'll align with all of my values and my purpose in life as well. And therefore, if your purpose in life is only to get a certain amount of money, let's say £1 million, and you achieve that, then yes, you will arrive at this fallacy. And then you'll move on to another number and another number, and which is why you'll find people that are extremely wealthy, extremely famous, but still have drug addictions. They'll commit. Some have depression, some have even committed suicide because they lack a purpose. The third point I wanted to talk about was negative people. Now, you will come across negative people in your life in different scenarios and different contexts. And sometimes it's just genuinely people that have been trapped in a cycle of negativity. And maybe they're too young, or maybe the people around them are in that same cycle and they just don't realize they're there yet. And so this is what I'm going to say. It's not really, I'm not really slating people that are negative. It's just the fact that this is what I've noticed. And for me and my family, this is the best thing that I need to do. So number one, if you find people that are trapped in negativity at work, so in your profession or in your professional life, the way I would deal with it is different to my personal life. So if you are a leader and you are faced with negative people, for me, it's just you are able to tolerate it, absorb the negativity that they have, whatever complaint they have, and then reflect positivity. What that means is that sometimes people may be complaining about a genuine issue, but that issue is something you can't really do anything about. So you empathize, because it probably will be a legitimate issue. You empathize, and then you try to reflect as much positivity as you can based on the problem that they have. The main thing for me is not to clash. So if they have a view that I completely disagree with, and that happens sometimes, it's not to clash, because it's not really going to benefit anyone, and it's just not beneficial. And what I tend to do with these people is focus on what you can change. So if they're complaining about something that we do have power to change within, then we'll make sure, okay, these are the things that you are not happy with, what can we do? And we'll give them a step-by-step plan, and we'll work towards it, and we'll genuinely try to ensure that you follow up over the course of time to make sure that they are working through that problem. And if there's something that you can't do anything about, then we must ignore it. Unfortunately, we need to be able to differentiate between the two. And this is a quotation I was actually looking for, because it's something I heard, but I'm not really sure why I found it until yesterday when I was actually searching for it, and it was a quote from the Bible. And we take what we want from it and the wisdom from it, and it goes, allow me to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and wisdom to know the difference. And this relates to the point I'm making, is that there will be some things that you can change, and you need to firstly have the courage to change it. And there'll be other things that you will never be able to change, and therefore worrying about it, complaining about it, doesn't really pay much dividends. And therefore, we need to be able to just ignore it and move forward. When it comes to work, there's another point I've made, and that was constructive feedback. So I feel there's a difference with complaining and giving constructive feedback. Now, for me, in the world of work, nothing's going to be perfect. Not everything will be perfect. And therefore, there is a place for constructive feedback. So I've written, when shared respectfully, so in a nice, polite way, in a way where people are going to take that feedback on board. And this is another principle from Radical Candle, which I mentioned a while back, to the right people. That means there's no point complaining to someone that has no power to change it. If you're going to leadership or going to someone that can change policy, then yes, there is a place for it. But if you're talking amongst your co-workers that have no power to change the things you're complaining about, then more often than not, you're wasting your time. So to the right people can foster growth, and I feel that would be different from complaining. Joe Rogan says, be around positive people. So this is in my personal life now, is try to be around positive people as much as possible. And people that are looking forward, that have a vision, that have a goal, that are working to better themselves as people, humans in any way, financially, physically, mentally, whatever it is. Be around positivity, and you yourself will reflect positivity as well. That doesn't mean that you will not get people that complain from time to time. But if this is your family member or if this is a friend, then it's your job to once again absorb that and then reflect positivity. Try to turn them around. That would be your job, and it's your job to decide who is and isn't worth your time in this aspect. Sometimes if you're around negative people too much, then you could be like a crabs in a bucket. So crabs in a bucket is a mentality I was reading about when it came to this. And so basically, this is what fishermen do, is they'll put a bunch of crabs in a bucket and they won't put a lid, or they won't stop them from leaving. Why? Because what crabs tend to do is when a crab is very close to coming out of the bucket, the other crabs will pull them down. And this will happen again and again and again. And it's led to the fact that fishermen just don't put a lid on their buckets when they have crabs in there, because they know no crab will be allowed to leave. And therefore, sometimes when you are stuck in a circle of negativity or around negative people, you cannot leave that bucket. They will pull you down, and it's so hard to get out, because there will always be something to complain about. And these complaints can sometimes, most of the time, are genuine. But the difference is that's not going to help you succeed in life. It's going to delay or inhibit your success or moving forward or just generally having a happy life. Everyone has something to complain about, whether it's a homeless man living under a bridge or the wealthiest man in the world living in a penthouse somewhere. They will always have something to complain about. But if you make that the focus of your life, then you won't have a happy life. This is a line I heard last week, and it really made me think about this. And it goes, you can never bring someone up if they don't want to. And no matter how good you are, how persuasive you feel you are, but the reverse is not true. Someone or somebody bad with a negative mindset can bring a good person down every single time. And he goes on to say he doesn't really know why that's the case, and this is more anecdotal, the things that he's seen in his life. But he found that to be true, and I feel that's the same. When I was younger and over life, I can think of examples where someone has taken a course to change their life, whether that be with addiction, whether that be just to lead a more positive life. But the group circle that they had before stayed the same. And more often than not, a few months down the line, you see that person, they're back into that habit again. Because it's easier for someone to persuade you to do a negative habit than to do the opposite, especially if they don't want to. In life, you are who you hang out with. Dan Pena said that, show me your friends and I'll show you your future. The last concept I wanted to talk about was the Bobo Doll Experiment by Albert Bandura. Now, this experiment had 3 parts. The first experiment, or the first stage, was there were two groups, and there were two groups of children watching two sets of adults. Now, the first group watched a set of adults approach a room with a Bobo doll, which is just like an inflatable doll. It's filled with air, and it constantly keeps coming back upright. The first group saw the adult interact with the Bobo doll and either ignored it or was just very positive around it. The second showed aggression. The second group saw the adult and he showed aggression to this doll, so he was punching it, kicking it, whatever frustration he had, he was letting it out, and the doll kept standing back up. Now, the second stage of this experiment was that the kids were then put in a room and they had lots of fun toys that they were playing with and they were immersed in playing, but very, very quickly they were removed from that room, and which led to frustration of the child because they wanted to stay in that room and carry on playing. So both the groups of kids were taken out of that room and they were put in the room with the Bobo doll in it. Now, what they found, the stage 3, was to see how that child reacted in that room with that doll present. One that was from the group where they saw the adult that didn't show aggression and the other did. Now, they found that in terms of the reaction, the group of children that saw aggression from the adult to the Bobo doll being put in that room eventually in stage 3, 9 out of 10 children hit, punch, kicked that doll. Only 1 out of 10 did the same in the other group. And the findings from that was that children, no matter what you say, they look at your actions a lot more. And therefore, whatever actions you are displaying in the home now and the things that you are doing every day, these are the types of habits they are much more likely to incorporate into their own lives. Whether that be something simple as being scared of an animal, or a bit more serious where you're showing anger or aggression at little things, not controlling your anger. And this is, I'm pointing the finger at me, number one, that I tend to, in certain situations, get angry a lot quicker than I should. And this is something that I'm constantly working on, and listening and reading about this experiment brought to light that fact in a major way, because I can see some of these tendencies being brought out in the kids, and it's making me think, is it because of me or is it's just them? And the reality is it's probably me. And this is something that I need to work on, not just in anger, but in everything, that they are watching everything that we do, and the bad habits they have, they will inculcate that in their own lives, and therefore we need to intentionally act or make sure you are aware of who's around when you're doing or saying certain things. So, lessons of the week for the kids. So what I wanted to do is the things that I mentioned this week already, I wanted to try relate that into how I can incorporate that into the life of the kids and me as a parent as well. So number one would be teaching kids financial literacy, and this is something that I've been big on since I was young. I brought an ESA and a Revolut card which is attached to mine, so any money that he gets, I'll put that on there, and then he can see the money and the amount of money he has on an app. It's a UK app, so we've not been able to use it as much here, but something equivalent to that is something that I need to work on as well. So it's very, very important to start young. He needs to understand the difference between saving and investment, and for him to develop healthy habits when it comes to both of these things. And therefore, I want to give him a monthly budget and split that. So I'll give him a budget every month and say, this is yours. This is how you need to be able to split it. And that would be invest a sum. So I'll show him some stocks and shares that he can use, and whilst that might sound very, very funny for a 7-year-old, he won't be investing in this to make money, but rather the things that he's currently enjoying, he'll invest in those companies instead. So if he likes Minecraft, for example, or he likes Lego, then these are the companies that he's aware of. He uses these products, and therefore he will own a part of that company. And therefore, even if he never makes any money on these, it's a very nominal amount that he's investing. It's just to inculcate that habit within him. And there'll be a portion that'll go to savings. But for him, savings will be more, this is something that he wants, this is how much it costs, this is the amount you save a month. You need to save accordingly, and then when you reach that amount, then you can buy it. So right now, I know he wants to buy an air-up bottle, and a lot of the kids in his class are having something similar, so he wants that. And I know he wants that because this is something he's mentioned over the course of a month. Usually, if he mentions something once on a whim and never mentions it again, I usually just forget about it. But if it's something that he's constantly mentioning over a few weeks, over time, then I know that this is something that he really wants, and he will likely enjoy it and make the most of it when he purchases it. And therefore, this is a goal that we've agreed together, and he will be saving up for this as well. And for him, as a child, we need to gamify as much as possible. So create a savings chart, something that he can color in every time he makes a certain amount of money, and then eventually he'll color the whole thing in once he reaches the amount of money he needs, so he can visually see the progress he's making towards what he's saving. So investments and savings, I think we'll split that small amount into there, and it'll probably be the equivalent of £20 a month or something equivalent to that, and he'll spend 10 in investing and 10 he'll save up for this bottle. So maybe in a couple of months he'll be able to get that. Secondly, and I wanted to try this yesterday, is when we go out for groceries, give him a list of the shopping list that we need, what we need to buy this week, and a budget. Now I know how much I spend every week approximately and how much this list is going to cost, and therefore I'll give him an amount that's similar to that, and then I'll just follow him around the grocery store and he'll be buying things, making sure most of the time he's buying the right brands, but he just gets an idea of how much we're spending every single month, and some of the things that he's buying, is he really appreciating them. So an example would be Viennese biscuits. So he loves Viennese biscuits, and in the UK they are very, very cheap. Here they're not. In the UK they're probably £1 for a pack, whereas here it's probably more £2 or £2.50. So it's a bit more expensive. And I found that last week when he purchased it, that he did really appreciate it. There was like packs open, or sometimes there was like crumbs everywhere, or it was left open so the air got to it overnight, and I felt like he just didn't appreciate it. So I told my wife this week that, look, we're not buying that amount. What we will do is we'll give him one pack, because these packs, we bought 2 and he finished it on the same day. So I said, look, we'll get 1 pack and say that's his, and he can eat that whenever he wants, but he gets that for the week. So it's up to him how he chooses to use that. And this is 1. Instead of getting 3, 4, 5, he's not going to appreciate that. But luckily, there was no Viennese biscuits this week, so I've saved a bit on that as well. But this is something I'll try next week for him. The second story doesn't relate to the kids per se, but it's a story that just, I don't know, it just took me aback a little. And it was in school, and this is a story that I remembered, where a student came up to me during my lunch break, and he asked me, sir, can you just do my laces for me? And this is a lower Key Stage 3 student. And I just got taken aback. I was like, this is how old you are and you can't do your shoelaces. And I said no. And I didn't say no out of pride. Because, if it was other situations where a student had a disability or something, of course I would do it. But this is a very able kid. I teach the kid, and he's a likable character. There's nothing wrong with him. But so, he just said, look, I've never had to do my shoelaces. There are people always doing it for me, like teachers. Or even when I was primary, my teachers used to do it for me. I have a maid at home, and she'll make sure it's done before I go to school, so it's ready. I just put my shoes in. So he said, I just didn't have to do it. And I just said, look, I'm not doing that for you, but I'm on lunch duty. I'm here for 20, 30 minutes. Let's do it. And initially, he was very reluctant and didn't want to do it. But, just being assertive, we sat down and we did our shoelaces. And to be fair, within about 15 minutes, he got the hang of it. And you could tell he was just so happy about that. And, it's such a small thing that we don't really think about. But he was just so happy. And it got me thinking about the proverb of teaching a man to fish, which we've all heard before. Give a man a fish and he'll be fed for a day. Teach a man to fish and he'll be fed for a lifetime. And whilst this wasn't a skill that was anywhere near as significant, it was still very important to him. And it just got me thinking sometimes where, like even right now with my kids, that we do tend to baby them a little because we want to save time. So each Adam getting changed, it takes a long time. But I know eventually he'll get faster and he'll save me time in the end, but it'll keep him and make him more independent as well. So the arrival fallacy, so something I mentioned before, how I would relate that to the kids is to make sure that they have a higher purpose. They are leading with the why, and for us it's about being good Muslims, and everything centers around that fact. The qualities and the values that we must show to each other and to the world, and how we are representing our religion would be the biggest thing for us, and everything falls under that, whether that's within business, whether that's interacting with friends or teachers at home or at school, and just enjoying the process. So whatever they tend to be working on, we enjoy it together. And even though that may be difficult, the process is what we need to enjoy, and the goal is just like a benefit. And a gratitude is something that I'm working on myself, and if I'm honest, I've not taken the time out every day to ask the kids what they are grateful for, and this is something that I should do. And I will start today, and even if it's just one thing, what did you enjoy about the day? What are you grateful for? And something that's they're in a habit of always being grateful for what they have. And this is what I've taken from the Arrival Fallacy for the kids. So negative people, and how I would relate that to the children, is just be aware of the type of kids that your children hang out with. And this might sound very judgmental, but I don't care, because this is probably going to be the most important thing you do for them. It doesn't mean that the kids are bad or their parents are bad. It's just the mindset, the goals they're working towards, the challenges they have. It may be different to what you're trying to aim for. And therefore, you need to make sure that the kids that my children hang around with, they need to make sure that their mindset is a certain way. And I usually look to the parents. What are their goals? What are they like? What are they trying to aim towards? What kind of things do they talk about in their free time? Because very likely that's what's going to get passed down to the children. And then if the children are hanging around together, then they're very, very likely going to start discussing very similar things. The mindset will be the same. And they'll reach a point where you're trying to teach them one thing and they're learning others. And at a certain time, I'm well aware that they'll respect the opinions of their friends much more than me. And that time may come, and I'm not sure when it will. And when it does, I need to make sure that the friends that they have are the ones that will encourage them to do the right thing. They will side with positivity, they'll have a positive mindset, and will work towards some great things, as opposed to the normal negative things that you see around. And as a teacher, you are exposed to all types of children. And I've always said there's no such thing as a bad child, just good or bad choices. And therefore, there'll be some children that gravitate towards good choices more often, and there'll be others that gravitate towards bad choices more often, and we need to make that decision for them, especially when they're younger. Lastly, the Bobo Doll Experiment, which I've already mentioned, that I need to make sure that I keep an eye intentionally about the things I'm saying and doing, because they are looking, and maybe it looks like they're paying attention, but their actions repeated over time become habits for them as well, and they'll know that this is the paradigm that's normal. So therefore, any negative habits I have, I need to actively try to erase them as much as possible to give them the best chance they have of being successful, being positive, happy adults when they're younger. And that is all for Diary of a Dad, episode 8. Thank you very much for listening once again, and if you haven't already, please make sure you subscribe to the channel and like this video. And if there's any other things that you want to talk about, please let me know. Before I leave, in the next few weeks, we've got winter half term, so I am looking to bring someone in to have a discussion on parenting, their journey as children, and similar discussions to what we have every single week anyway. So if there is anyone that's interested, please give me a shout. And once again, thank you very much for listening, and hope you guys have a great week. Thank you very much.